Hi everyone, welcome back to High School Science 101. Last week I got my students to write down a whole bunch of different questions relating to science. I'll answer 8 today, but I've got about 60, so I'll answer the rest in future videos. Let's get started. Our first question is, how did the rings form around Saturn? So this is 4 billion years ago. This is baby Saturn. There were lots of rocks and bits of asteroid orbiting around it. Most of the bigger ones were traveling in an anti-clockwise direction around the planet. There were some smaller ones that were traveling in a clockwise direction, but they didn't have as much mass and as much force as these ones. So when they smashed into these ones going in this direction, they either got destroyed or they were pushed into the same direction as well. So that's how the rings were formed, and that's why they all travel in an anti-clockwise direction. Question 2 is another space question, and it's why are the planets so far apart from each other? But when we're looking at space and the whole universe, our planets are actually pretty close together. Let's look at the sun here. We have Mercury, which is 58 million kilometers away from the sun. Then we have Venus, which is 108 million kilometers away from the sun. Then we have us, Earth, and we're 149 million kilometers away from the sun. We're talking millions of kilometers here between planets in our solar system. But let's look at other stars. Alpha Centauri is the next closest star apart from the sun. It's 4 light years away. So 4 years traveling at the speed of light away, which is 40 trillion kilometers away. We also have Sirius, which is another big star in our galaxy, and that's 8.1 light years away, which is 81 trillion kilometers away. So we're talking trillions of kilometers. But let's go another step further. The furthest known galaxy in our known universe is, so let's just draw a little diagram here. This is a galaxy. The furthest known galaxy is 13.3 billion light years away. So if we could travel at the speed of light, it would still take us 13.3 billion years to reach the furthest known galaxy in the known universe. So really, when we look at the perspective, our planets are actually pretty close together. Question 3 is, why do fish die when you take them out of water? Basically, the way fish gills work is that they're adapted to extract the tiny bits of oxygen that are dissolved in the water. If you take in too much oxygen, so when you take them out of the water and they're exposed to the air, the gills aren't adapted to take in that much and they can't absorb it, and unfortunately the fish suffocates after a few minutes. Question 4 is, why do people have different skin colors? The answer is a pigment that your body produces, or a chemical that your body produces, called melanin. And it's a darker sort of pigment that makes your skin a darker color when you've been exposed to the sun. And when you get freckles and moles, that's basically an accumulation of melanin in a certain area. And people in warmer countries tend to have more melanin, which gives them that darker skin, because it actually works as a bit of a natural sunscreen, and it protects your skin from UV radiation. So it makes more sense, and it's actually biologically advantageous to have more melanin, and therefore more UV protection if you live in warmer areas than in colder areas. Question 5 is a really good one. It's, how do you become an obstetrician? An obstetrician is a medical specialist that specializes in pregnancy and childbirth. So I'm going to go through the whole pathway to become any medical specialist, not necessarily an obstetrician. So we start off with VCE, which is your high school, and assuming you do well, you'll get into a degree, which usually takes about 3 years, and hopefully that would be somehow related to biomedical science or medicine. And then you'll get a GPA, which is your average during your degree, your grades. You'll also have to do a GAMSAT, which is a medical entrance exam. It's about 6 hours. And then you have to do an interview. And assuming all of that goes well, you'll get into a medicine degree. And that can usually take about 4 to 6 years. And then you have to do an internship and a residency. at hospitals, and that can usually take about 2 years. And then you can go and do your specialist training. And that can be in any field. For obstetrics, you will become a fellow of the Royal Australian and New Zealand College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. So that can take about 6 years. And most specializations take about 6 years at any college specific to whatever specialization you want to do. And that is your pathway to become a medical specialist. Question 6 is, how do plants release oxygen? You would know from my food chains video that plants produce glucose and oxygen, but how do they release that oxygen into the atmosphere? Let's look at a leaf and let's magnify a part of this leaf. So just like your skin has pores, plants also have tiny microscopic holes called stomata, and it's through these stomata that gases such as carbon dioxide and oxygen move in and out of the plant. So these stomata have guard cells next to them, either side, and these guard cells are responsible for opening and closing the stomata to let the carbon dioxide in and the oxygen out. Question 7 is, why does the moon control the tides? The Earth has its own gravitational field, as you know, and that prevents you from floating around in space. It also prevents the moon from floating around in space. It keeps the moon locked in an orbit around the Earth. Although the moon is a lot smaller than the Earth, it has its own gravitational field as well. And you don't really notice it because it's not very strong, but you do notice that all the water is actually attracted towards the moon. And that results in our high tides and our low tides. So if you live around here, it's going to be a high tide. If you live around here, it's going to be a low tide. Question 8 is, what will cause the end of human civilization? There are lots of different theories to this. One of them is the risk of a supervirus. When there are diseases around the world, scientists try and create medicines and vaccines and antibiotics to try and combat these diseases. And often they work. But one day there could be a supervirus that's immune to all of the medicine we can throw at it. And if it becomes airborne, that could be a bit of a problem. Another threat to mankind is artificial intelligence. Elon Musk, who is the guy behind PayPal and Tesla and SpaceX, has said that artificial intelligence is one of the biggest threats to mankind. And for example, if we create a robot and we tell it to make as much money for us as possible, it might then go out and buy shares in defense companies and weapons companies, and then it'll go and start a war. And that would make a lot of money because a lot of weapons are being bought and sold, so you would make lots of money, but it's started a war. So if we create robots, we need to make sure that they're given really strict ethical boundaries, otherwise they could be a threat to us. A third theory is the risk of an asteroid or a comet hitting the Earth and wiping all of us out. Asteroids between 1 and 2 kilometers in diameter have a chance of causing a lot of damage to our climate and therefore affecting us, but they only hit several times every million years. Asteroids that are 5 kilometers or bigger definitely have a chance of causing mass extinction across the planet. And there are also comets that orbit around the sun, and 15 of them are between 1 and 10 kilometers in size, and they pass within the Earth's orbit. But the chances of anything hitting us is very, very slim. There's nothing on the horizon, and no human has ever been killed by a rock falling out of space in the past 1,000 years. That's it for today. Like I said, I've got a whole bunch of other questions that I want to get around to answering. And if you've got a question, leave it in the comments below and I'll add it to the rest of the questions. Thank you for your support so far. It's been a huge amount of support in the short amount of time that I've had this channel. And keep liking and commenting and I'll keep making the videos. See you next time.